Hello, friends. Permanentizing. You probably haven't heard this term before. I think Rebecca and I may have created it. Well, it's a big wide world. I'm sure someone else is using it out there. This is a mental habit, essentially, that falls into the same category as generalizing, catastrophizing, and it has a huge impact on our lives if we're not aware of it. This is one of those many things that is operating on autopilot behind the background, ruling our lives without us being conscious of its presence. As soon as we become conscious of its presence, we change that relationship, we change that game. That goes for all of these mental constructs that we've covered so many of on this channel. When we become aware of them, we start to gain power over them. Doesn't mean it's not an ongoing relationship, but today we will start you on that route to understanding what permanentizing is and how you can shift it so it doesn't rule over your life. As a little bonus at the end of this video, I'm going to talk about how to use this principle to shift how you deal with pain. So if you have chronic pain in your life, or you just want to be able to sit in the ice water and amaze people around you, this tool has that power to shift your perception of pain. The idea behind this is pretty simple. This is when our mind takes something in our world experience and tries to increase the duration of it beyond what its actual duration would be. Now, if you're a parent, a great example is constantly, for most of us, we will see some behavior in our child that manifests today. Maybe we haven't really seen it before. And we will watch this behavior and we'll see it again tomorrow. And then we will decide that if we don't nip this in the bud, this is going to be who they are as adults. Now, if we step back and we look at that rationally, most of us, I was a horrible kid. Oh my gosh, I was a terrible person to my parents. I ate junk food constantly. I watched horrible movies that children should not have been watching. That did not decide who I was as an adult. Or at least it did not decide it in the way that a regular mind would usually look and say, okay, if some 11-year-old is watching Road Warrior over and over, they're going to turn into a psychopath. Not the case, apparently, unless something hasn't emerged yet that is waiting to emerge in my personality. That's an easy example. We do this also with people when we're talking to them. So if I am starting to get engaged in a relationship with somebody and I see some behavior, I am going to often decide that is who that person is. They seem like a nice person and we go out on a walk and they see a bug and they step on it. And I assume that that is the way they are, that they're a person that just doesn't respect life in general and goes out of their way to kill and destroy something. And I also do this with myself. So when I'm having an emotion, I'm sad about something, my mind likes to, in a very kind of subtle, tricky way, make me feel as if I'm going to be sad forever. And the same when we're in happiness. That happiness can feel so overwhelming that we feel like we are lost in that happiness forever. It's going to last forever. And you can see how this sets us up. If we're happy, we of course are going to have a time when we're sad in the future. And so the sad then becomes such a bad thing because we thought of the happiness as being permanent. The sadness, when I'm caught in it, takes on such an extra heaviness and seriousness when I feel that it is a permanent state that I'm going to be caught in. When I see that person step on a bug, there are other explanations for that action. I could run through a whole litany of them. Which one will I choose as the one that I think is real? Most often my mind is simply going to go to, they are a bad person who does not respect life. I don't want to be friends with them. Now, the tricky part about permanentizing is that even though our mind does this, as I said, it's in a subtle way. It's not where my mind goes, oh, I actually think I'm going to be sad for the rest of my life. Instead, it's a feeling or sensation that I'm going to be sad for a very long duration or the rest of my life. It's, if we're asked about it, we're going to, of course, say, well, I know, of course, that sadness is not going to be forever. But it sure feels like it is. This hits us in a very poignant way when we lose someone we love. And we are lost in that, the despair of the loss. It's greatly painful. Somewhere inside of us, we know that tomorrow, the next day, each day that passes, that pain will lessen to some extent. But it doesn't feel like that. It feels as if we are captured in this emotion forevermore. So as you can see, this permanentizing, it affects me emotionally. It affects how I see others. And it affects my relationship with people, from spouses to friends to children. It has a powerful impact, and it has that impact by essentially telling us a lie. Rebecca, you may have heard me say this before, one of the most helpful things that she has said regarding child rearing is she says, Catton, if this is still a problem when they're 18, we'll worry about it then. That is so helpful for taking my mind from the thought of, oh my gosh, they left their dishes on the table. That means they're going to be slovenly adults. And over and over and over again, find that children have stages. They go through these periods of emotional, mental, physical growth that have strong effects on how they interact with their world, but not permanent effects. These are temporary effects that shift and change over time. It happens with adults too. We have these stages, if you will, that we go through, these periods of time when we are shifting, especially for personal growth oriented people. We're going to be shifting mentally, emotionally, not always our best selves, sometimes more than our best selves. We go through these periods, and to see that that's just part of a growth process. Wisdom cultures across the board try to call our attention to this. They look at the clouds in the sky and say, look at the clouds. They shift and change moment by moment. Never are they permanent. These wisdom traditions are trying to call our attention to the impermanence of life on many levels, right? From how long we're going to live, to relationships, to everything we experience has this quality of impermanence. But our mind loves to look at the sky and it wants to freeze it. It wants to freeze the circumstances around us, to crystallize. That's a term we've used in our online courses. To crystallize something in our mind that isn't actually crystal, that isn't permanent. So what do we do about this? As soon as we recognize that our mind is permanentizing, we ask intelligent questions. We step in and we say, you know what, I feel like this is going to go on forever, but I know it's not. And we reinforce that part of our mind that knows that impermanence is the rule rather than permanence. When we see another person perform an action and our mind wants to crystallize that person and say, that person is bad, that person is going to turn out in such a way, that person is inconsiderate, we stop and we question. And we say, are there other explanations for this? You know, I often say, always assume that that person's cat just died yesterday and they're really upset and sad about it. When we do that, we approach people differently. We give them the benefit of the doubt. We treat them as we would want to be treated. Because we all know that we're not our best selves all the time. Now, even though for most of us, permanentizing is an unconscious habit that wages destruction in our life, and it really does, it really creates a lot of problems. Even though it's one of the most subtle of these operators behind the scenes and most difficult to understand and recognize. But like any tool, it is not purely bad. In fact, we can use permanentizing in a positive way. So once we recognize where it is in our life, we can start to say, all right, I see this operating. Now I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to use it consciously. And this is important to understand because as we start to understand permanentizing and we embrace impermanence, we're in a danger zone. We're in a danger zone because we can take an emotion like happiness and we can start to think, well, happiness isn't that happy because it's not permanent. It's going to go away, so why should I really let myself go into it? This is the road down which we go where life starts to become just sort of gray and dull. Now, with some awareness, we don't have to go there. And here's how we do it. Again, this is a little subtle, so follow with me, but I know you can get this. I'm experiencing happiness. The first thing that happens is that my mind permanentizes that happiness. And it says, whoa, I'm so happy, and I just get lost in it. I'm setting myself up for a really bad fall, probably. Because at some point I'm going to be unhappy, and that rug is going to be pulled out from under me. A deer probably just died. That rug's going to be pulled out from under me. Okay, now I stop and I say, I realize that I'm permanentizing. I know if I permanentize, I'm setting myself up for a fall. So I'm going to realize that the happiness is impermanent. Now I'm starting to get into that place where I can go, happiness is impermanent. All right. And I kind of just pulled the plug on my happiness, right? But now I'm going to permanentize again, but I'm going to do it consciously. I'm going to permanentize realizing that it's not permanent. When I do this, I soak into the feeling. I say, here's happiness. I'm going to experience this as if it was going to be the rest of my life. At the same time that I know consciously that it's not. And this is the magic spell that allows us to feel, to be truly happy when we're happy, without worrying about, will that happiness go away? You see how this works? It's really powerful. It is life-changing in the sense that almost always we are experiencing the things of life, either permanentizing them or being ready for them to go away. In either case, we're not experiencing them as they are. But when we consciously permanentize them, then we can soak into them. We can feel sadness. And we can, it sounds a little strange, but we can kind of enjoy that sadness. We can experience excitement and just be excited and love it without that mental setup that undermines our ability to feel. Now, I also said that I would tell you how to use this to deal with pain. And I did a video on this quite a while back, years ago, I think, when I broke through some ice and sat in there for a while and talked about how this tool can alter your ability to go through painful things. I use this with my shoulder surgery, not using drugs, using some of these mental tools. So if I am experiencing some pain, and let's just use that example. I'm just broke through some ice, I'm sitting there in the ice water. Immediately, I want to get out. And here's where the permanentizing and the impermanence both come into play And one of these is going to work for you, but I can't tell you which one, because it seems, in my experience with working with people, to be different for different personality types. So you'd have to figure out which one works for you. But in the one, when I'm in that water, I realize that all this sensation that's coming on me, that it is impermanent. It's not going to last. Now, this method doesn't work for me, but it works really well for some people. And they realize they are not stuck here. And that allows them to deal with that experience, that quote negative experience, very differently than when it feels permanent to them. Because when you fall through the ice, it can very easily mentally feel permanent. For me, I do the opposite. If I'm having that pain from the surgery, or I'm sitting there in the ice, I think, I am permanently here. This is the rest of my life. And the trick there is that when I believe for a moment that for the rest of my life I'm going to be there in that ice, I stop resisting it. I don't fight it anymore. And when I'm not fighting it, then the experience of the pain changes. In both cases, we're tapping into parts of our brain that want to enhance the experience of pain through resistance. And we are undermining that resistance so that we can just experience the pain itself. And as many of you probably know, if you've tried cold showers or other things, when we stop resisting that painful experience, it's much less painful. The actual pain that we are usually experiencing is not nearly as great as the pain plus the resistance to the pain. It's that resistance that adds so much tension to it and creates the sensation of pain in a much stronger way than the actual sensation that we're experiencing. All right, my friends, if you don't stay for the end cards on my video, stay for a second. You're going to see tons of the cool stuff that we offer on our website, our books, coaching practice, all kinds of stuff. So check that stuff out. Come visit our website, and thank you for watching. So grateful for all of you. Love to you all.